before we start the show, I just want to shout out our sponsor for today's episode, Aura Frames. Aura Frames digital photo frames are the perfect personal gift that look great and are easy to use, ideal for that loved one you always struggle to buy for this Christmas. Just download the Aura app to get started and you can upload unlimited photos and videos which you can keep adding to anywhere, anytime. Your frame will even come in a premium gift box to give it that extra special touch. So if you're interested, go to auraframes.co.uk and get 35% off the best-selling carver matte frame by using the promo code TAW at checkout to order yours now. That's spelled Aura. Aura is spelled, A-U-R-A. Frames.co.uk and code TAW at checkout for £35 off. It is TAW Unwrapped, where we unwrap the big talking points from Liverpool across the football world. I'm Josh Sexton, and today I'm joined by Phil Blundell, by Kieran Molyneux, and by Kev Reilly to get stuck into the latest big talking point. Liverpool got back to winning ways at the weekend with a clean sheet to boot after a few bold changes from manager Arne Slot. Mo Salah was surprisingly dropped to the bench, and the Reds, it could be argued, did look better for it. It particularly freed up Florian Wirtz, who has missed the past few games since international break with an injury, but bounced back with aplomb at the London Stadium. So, first of all, gents, as we get stuck into Florian and the sort of bigger picture and what it means really for Liverpool and him and the future of things, what do we make of Florian's individual performance? Come to you first, Phil.
I thought it was his best game for Liverpool. I thought he looked bright. He was getting the ball into the right spaces where he was getting it and then releasing it. There were lots of clever passes. There was a calmness about what he was doing, and which I think a lot of people possibly haven't been in terms of just thinking, because he's a £110 million footballer or whatever it was he cost. It was somewhere in that region, wasn't it? Yeah. And you're like, I want him to do something. I want goals. I want assists. I want these things. But he was sort of like, well, you look at the first goal, for example. He plays the ball to Gakpo. Gakpo gets the ball to Isak. It's in the back of the net. He hasn't got an assist. He gets no credit for it, but he plays a huge part in it by being calm on the edge of the box. And I feel like there's a lot of times we've been in that position as a team in the last month, 2 months or whatever, and either gone, oh, this is the breakdown of a set piece. There's centre-backs in there. I'll sort of put a ball in and I'll try and find one. Because it's very rare Liverpool would score a goal like that. And both centre-backs are in the box at the time. Because you're looking at it going, well, take advantage of that, take advantage of the height, because it was a sort of breakdown of a long throw, wasn't it? And he wasn't interested in any of that. He was like, well, this is the best way I can get this into this position. He gets it to there, and very soon after we've scored.
Absolutely. Anything you saw in particular that stood out, Kieran?
I like the way he floated a lot. I mean, there's been times where people have been calling him to play off the left. There's been times where he's operated the right when Mo's gone off and stuff like that. At the start, it did feel like he was drifting towards the right, but then I seen as the game went on, he was over the left in the 10, getting beyond the striker and stuff like that. I've not seen any heat maps or any data behind this, so before I'm talking rubbish, I'm sorry, but
I think they flashed one up during the game, to be fair, and it had been good from the first half. So
I just felt like he was everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I think his past couple of performances have been his best performances for Liverpool. Every time he
good before the injury.
Every time he plays at the minute, I can see the quality. And I'll be honest with you, we talked about this when you went into the pre-season tour. Like, he looked great from the off. He looked absolutely awesome, insane in videos, in pre-season matches, and when it sort of did, remember the 007 business and the memes carrying on, even then I was thinking he's playing all right. The rest of the team don't look great, and I'm not going to be looking at £110 million football who I think looks decent. I start getting on his back, especially like 6 or 7 games in. I think as the season goes on, we'll see more and more of what he can do. I feel like there's a big goal coming. I actually backed him yesterday. I don't bet, but I backed a goal and an assist by Wirtz. I just felt like he was going to have a massive game.
Should have done Gakpo instead, mate.
I should have. but it could have came in by the first half. There was a couple of chances he put into Isak. There was one which he nearly scored himself. So I just feel he's going to get better and better. The problem for Slot is, or the challenge for Slot is to make sure he's in the team and affecting the game like that. And obviously, he done it yesterday, but there's been times he's been on the pitch when we're playing with live players like Mo. He hasn't looked that effective at times, whether that's just because the team's not playing well or what. But I do feel as if that 10's his best position, and whether that's behind one striker or 2 strikers, I don't know. But I like seeing him in there.
Yeah, it's almost like all the criticism you referenced was overblown nonsense performed in bad faith by mainstream media and opposition fans alike, really, on social media. Yeah, exactly. Formed by executives and ambassadors and things, which seem to
saying mad. See the one he said today about they promised him the number 10 shirt to play as number 10, and now he's a number 7 and he's doing different things. I think you're reading maybe a bit too much to his shirt number there, mate.
Yeah. I
You
also
can have anything between 1 and 99, mate.
Cry more is right, really, because they're obviously looking daft with Voltamada as well, aren't they, at the moment? So I'm all for buying executives and ambassadors looking a show. But Kev, back to Florian Wirtz. What do we make of the role he was asked to play yesterday? Because that feels like it's been one of the things that has maybe been overanalyzed, particularly by us as fans. Really, is what the best role for him is. We referenced that, the literal shirt number and things there. But what do we make of the positions he was popping up in and things like that?
I mean, that was his best at Leverkusen forever. Being that player between the lines and sticking to the middle. It's interesting because in the past, even when he was out on the left, he was given a little bit of a free role in terms of he was able to drift into the left. I think we're talking about in the Real Madrid game when there's the chance he's actually over on the right from the left. So he was always roaming. But I think his sort of physical attributes have been played down. We've not really seen that physicality from him, but I felt like we saw a little bit of that against West Ham. He was able to hold people off the ball a bit more, and he wasn't scared of a challenge. He was really brave. I mean, this is a lad who's 22 as well, so it is really, really impressive. I think you've just got to play him in the middle, and like Keo says, I'm not sure if it's a Salah issue. I'm wondering if it's a number 10 issue. We want Szoboszlai there as well, so do you play with two 10s? And if you play with two 10s, you probably don't have two wingers, because your fullbacks are providing the width. So it was great to see a positive display from him yesterday. I think too much pressure has been put on him in terms of his assists and his goals. Ultimately, he's a player who carries you up the pitch, who gets you yardage, who gets you close to the box. And I think he did that spectacularly yesterday. It was great to watch.
The pressure thing's a big shout. There was lots of pressure on him. And as you say, mainly come from opposition fans and media, and probably as a result of a bit of jealousy at Liverpool winning the league title and then going and pick the best number 10 and going after the best number 9. Every single team's fans want Isak to fail. They want Wirtz to fail. So if you can look at 7 games, you go, he's got no goals and assists, and try and jump on that and put a few funny memes on the internet. Crack on, but as Phil says, he's clearly quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward, Phil, what role do we think is best for him? Because there's obviously a couple of moving parts in this, and I want to kind of save the Salah chat because I want to go into that a little bit more depth later in the show. But Kev mentioned Szoboszlai and people there, and I guess you could even argue that Gomez and his position yesterday kind of unlocks something a little bit different for Wirtz too, in terms of literally just where people have stood on the football pitch almost.
I think, obviously, if we do the Salah thing in a bit, I think it's quite interesting because I think that is a huge part of everything. I feel like Liverpool have made signings for the post-Mohamed Salah world, and it's probably just unlikely to expect it to click straight away with him still here. So you're sort of possibly going to see this season of him sort of just finding his feet, really. And I feel like when you look at the price tag and the expectation, that's possibly going to be quite difficult for some people to stomach, that he's not expected to just come in and run things and be the main man. But you mentioned his age before, and it is a thing, and part of it is because he's got to learn a very different style of football. And I think you've seen a bit of a progression in the his first few games. He thought he had a lot more time on the ball than he did, and he was getting dispossessed. He was getting pushed off it. He's getting dispossessed, and that's fine. That's what happens. But I think yesterday, and I think in recent times, he's learnt where someone's going to try and tackle him, where someone's going to try and nudge him off the ball, and he gets rid of the ball nicely. I thought there was periods where him and McAllister linked up quite nicely yesterday when they were just sort of on the same wavelength and knew that pop it off and then give it him back, and you create sort of 5-10 yards of space and you can go from there. So I just think it's about getting him close to people. He linked up reasonably well with Gakpo. He links up well with Isak. There's 2 beautiful balls he's put across the face of goal, and on another day, Isak would get on the end of them. I think one of them, the first goal actually does come from, but I noticed this morning Mavropanos was having a little bit of a pullback at Isak, and if Isak had managed to get the run on him, he probably actually gets on the end of that ball and has the shot earlier, because it's just a great ball. But there's just a lot to like about what you're seeing, isn't there? And you're in a position where there's a really solid element of succession planning in this, and I think we've sort of got to accept that you want a player of that level of expectation around it to run from the start, but maybe you just have to learn to walk in English football first, and that's fine. We've just got to see it.
We say this about 27 and 28-year-old footballers at the pump.
Yeah.
Like who were in Europeans' best leagues and the best players in them leagues, and they come in and they it might take a bit of time to adjust the Premier League. Premier League's fast. So we've seen players come and flop completely in the Premier League and have to leave again. So to be criticising a 21-year-old for not finding his feet within 10 games is a bit rash, to say the least.
And we're asking the squad to understand how he plays. And like you say, the 1-2s was fantastic to watch because obviously they've learned, there's no bother here. It's a bit like, give it to Curtis. He's probably not going to lose it if he's playing that deeper role. If the players have that mentality of there's 1-2s on again here, and we saw the link-up play with Szoboszlai and McAllister with Wirtz. If you're popping it off and finding space instantly, you can get it back, and that's just opened up the pitch instantly. It took a while for Gravenberch to realise that thing that Phil's talking about of, I'm going to wait for the contact and I can spin it. But when your players are adapting as well, you can't just put it all on the plate on Wirtz and say, figure it out, because you need his teammates to understand what he's doing ultimately as well, don't you?
Yeah. Kia, one of the big questions I think we've had as fans so far really has been whether he's a forward or midfielder. And I think one of the things we say a lot on this show, to be honest, is I wonder if we as fans are a little bit guilty of thinking of things in black and white. Does it matter too much if he's a forward or a midfielder? Is the truth actually it's just a hybrid between the two, and it's up to Slot to figure out which games he should be more of a forward and which games he should be more of a midfielder?
I think we as fans try and talk about positions and roles as if they're set in stone, whereas the elite Premier League managers will not look at Gakpo and say he's playing on the left wing. Will not look at Wirtz and say he's playing in the old-fashioned 10. we do that we do that as a bit of a guide. We see the graphics on the screen before the game as a bit of a guide. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It honestly doesn't matter. You said yourself, in between the lines, we'll use that phrase about Wirtz right through his career. He's great in the lines, in between the lines, he's great in the pockets. So that is what a number 10 is. It's an attacker that can come back into midfield. It's a midfielder that can join the attack. That's what he is. And I don't care whether people want to call him a midfielder or whether they want to call him a striker. As long as he's putting in performances and creating chances and scoring goals, then it really doesn't matter. Yeah,
and it feels like we're in an age now, Kev, as well, of kind of positionless football, I guess. And I look at that game against Real Madrid in particular, where, in theory, he plays on the left wing, and I think that's probably the role or the area of the pitch that he occupies the most in that game too. But it was more about the job he was expected to do that day, which then differed to when you go into the Man City game, for example, where the one thing I kept thinking in that City game was City are allowing Konate time on the ball. He didn't feel like the outball was Conor Bradley, and more often than not, when he tried the Conor Bradley outball, that didn't work. Maybe last season, if you even want to look at that and sort of compare, that would have been Konate passing to Trent, and then Trent suddenly is an outball because he can do a 70-yard switch, and then Luis Diaz is on that wing, who is great at bringing a ball down out of the sky, out of nothing, and taking on men. And I don't think Wirtz is necessarily going to be that Luis Diaz player, but is he maybe something closer to that than like a Cody Gakpo is, for example?
I don't think so. I see him as a sort of multifunctional forward in that he can get between the lines. You want him in and around the box. You want him in those positions. But then when you think about us out of possession, you kind of want him a lot deeper. He's a bit like a Toni Kroos who plays further up the field. But you don't want him necessarily doing those Toni Kroos bits deeper, especially in possession. So 9 times out of 10, I do want him sort of seeing as a forward. I found it funny because I think the club call him a forward on their website, don't they? They don't call him a midfielder, which was interesting. That led to a lot of people saying, "Oh, is he going to be playing out on the left?" I think of a player who's playing out the left as like a pacey, strong, tactile, good at one-on-ones, kind of player like a Doku sort of player. So I don't think he suits into that role very well. I think it's like we've said, if he's playing out there, it's not because he's actually playing out there as a winger. It's just that's the space he's going to occupy, whether it's going to be...
It's where he's based.
It's where he's based. If he's going to be pressing their right back or if he's going to be pressing their right-sided centre-back from there, that sort of thing. But I think he's sort of wasted out there, and it was great to see him in the 10, and I hope to see more of it in the middle rather than out on the left.
And obviously, Phil, as I said, it comes on a game-by-game basis, really, doesn't it? Like, what you do for Real Madrid is different from what you then have to do against Manchester City, especially when you're at home against Madrid and you're away against City. And I look at that performance against Madrid and sort of wonder, well, is that away home for Liverpool, where in the games where Gakpo maybe is a little bit too passive for you? And that's not a criticism of Gakpo, really, because Mo Salah is a passive footballer. He just so happens to score double the goals in any sort of given season than Cody Gakpo would. But I look at Wirtz and wonder if that is is away home or if you're playing him on the wing, again, sort of talking about the idea of positionless football and things, but if his role is majority based out on the wing, is that then hindering what he can do and how he can impact the game through the middle a little bit?
I think it just depends how you set everything else up, because I sort of feel like positionless is almost the best way of judging him and just sort of tell him he can almost go anywhere, but that does mean you have to have a very structured setup of what the other people do, and you have to have people who are willing to accept that. And I think in fairness we probably do have a lot of footballers like who will sacrifice themselves for the team is not really quite what I mean, but will be aware that they might have to work a little bit harder to do that, to do X, because he might have to be out of position and leave a gap somewhere. Like, this is something that ultimately Liverpool have become accustomed to the last sort of couple of years with Mohamed Salah.
Yeah,
so it's not something that they aren't familiar with, that they aren't sure how to do, because they've had to react to that. But I think when you have someone who has that much talent and that much ability to just break a game open and control the game at the same time, like having the ability to do the two of them is huge. Think about Mohamed Salah. He's had the ability to break any game he wants open, but he's never really had the opportunity to control it. Gakpo's kind of similar, obviously not to the same extent, but the man is completely all-end product, but he's never sort of going to spend 70 minutes hugely involved dictating what's going on in the game, whereas this is a man who is able to do both of these things, like in a way that you think about McAllister at times after Christmas last year was just running the show.
Yeah.
He has it within him to combine that bit that Alexis McAllister's doing with the bit that Mohamed Salah is doing, and that is just hugely exciting. So you can fit him in however you want. Ultimately, you've just got to make sure that the other players buy into it, and I don't see any reason, to be perfectly honest, why they wouldn't.
And I sort of wonder whether that fed into the perceptions of him, Kieran, because you referenced the perceptions, I guess, more from opposition fans and the media before, but I'm sort of thinking about the perceptions that we had as fans, and I particularly remember watching him in the pre-season, how he floated around and thinking, like, this is going to be another one of those Alisson or Van Dijk or Salah signings where you can, and it's not to sort of disrespect the way that they were bedded into sides by Jurgen Klopp at the time, really, but it felt like Jurgen Klopp could just plug them into the team and they all just worked because they were such supremely talented footballers. I think there's been a base of work clearly that Slot and Wirtz together have had to do here in order to sort of earn his place in the team, really, it feels, or at least a base of work that makes him worthy of having the shirt. And I wonder if that was something we didn't necessarily anticipate of him, that he would have to work almost a little bit harder to be the one who is on the ball more, rather than just being like, oh, I'm really good, so you just pass to me.
Yeah, I think I agree and disagree with that, in the sense of, I think he is a plug-in footballer. I think he is shown already he's a top quality, world-class level. He's done it at Leverkusen. He's come to Liverpool, and that's not going to change what he can do. But in terms of having to work at it, I just think Liverpool's system is not for him right now. Again, go back to Mo Salah. I think Liverpool have massively planned for life after Mo Salah with this window. Given the fact that next summer is a World Cup window as well. Yep. So Liverpool have gone shopping this summer. There's a good possibility that Mo Salah leaves next summer or the summer after. If that happens, and then you're trying to shop around in a World Cup window, or 3 weeks after the World Cup's finished at inflated prices to try and find your new number 10 or your new winger, then you're going to be in a bit of a difficult position. So, yeah, I agree and disagree. I think he's a plug-in footballer. I think he can walk into any side in the world right now and he'll start. But in terms of getting the best out of him, yeah, we've had to work at that a little bit, just because of the system Liverpool are playing isn't exactly what he's used to, and also Liverpool have been through the mill over the past few months, and he hasn't walked into the brightest dressing room, and he hasn't walked into a team that's in the best form. So we've had to work at it a little bit.
And there's been injuries.
There's been injuries as well, but he's definitely good enough to start for any team in the world.
And I guess there's always that foundation of having to work hard for anybody coming into a team, really, Kev. Like the two players I sort of thought of the most, really, when I think of Wirtz's progression into what he is now, but also trying to sort of, map out what he's going to go on to be. I was thinking about like Wijnaldum and Firmino, where the player that we thought we were signing in, Gini Wijnaldum, was so different to the player that we ended up getting. I think he was like majority winger at Newcastle, really, if a bit of an unorthodox winger, and then ends up becoming, effectively a 6, somewhere between a 6 and an 8 for us. And then Firmino, like, I'll never forget that game away at Old Trafford where Brendan's playing him at right wing back, and then suddenly he's this like all action number 9 who's like warped perceptions. It is mental, honestly.
Wild game of football, that one.
It was one you're happy to scrub.
Christian Benteke scores the greatest goal in the history of the world, and then no one remembers.
Yeah.
But everyone remembers that Roberto Firmino played left wing back or right wing back. Where frigging hell it was. Can't remember which side it was, but I remember going, that's bad.
But that's the thing. Like I guess like I seem to remember at the time that one of the things that I don't know if it was Ian Ayre who'd have been around at the time, but one of the transfer sort of bods at the club at the time had spoke about how good Firmino was at pressing, and then we didn't really get to see that until Klopp came in, and then we obviously got to see it in a very sort of different area of the pitch to maybe at least where Brendan anticipated, and that I guess is where I'm looking at it with Wirtz now is like it felt like Wijnaldum and Firmino in particular had to just like prove they were capable of working so hard that they just earn like a slot on the pitch, and then it almost becomes like plug and play from that point. It's like, well, Wijnaldum works so hard in the transition and in running through midfield, so the natural place to put him is somewhere where he can pick the ball up deep and carry it forward. And Firmino is so good in the press and Harry in centre halves, for example. So the best place to put him is right in front of the centre halves, or on somebody's number 6,
left wing back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I'm looking at Wirtz now and being a little bit like, well, you could almost look at just the best bits about his game and think, well, what he's really good at is kind of filling in between the lines on any side. So naturally feels like the best place to put him, where he's going to do his best work, and where I guess in that sense he's going to work hardest because he's going to feel the most reward is just to play him like literally as the central 10.
Yeah, I think of him like as a sort of David Silva kind of player in terms of that typical number 10 that's playing that position. The thing that you mentioned about the players sort of like growing into something that we never thought. That happens all the time. I feel like in a way that sort of happened yesterday with Joe Gomez. I feel like Arne Slot's probably like, oh, I kind of get what he offers now. Not that he didn't before, but your perception can change. And I think that if you have a sort of mentality that this is very rigid and this is what I think, then you've kind of nowhere to go after that. There's loads of examples of that with us. Trent, when we inverted him, that was something that we didn't even know that was a thing, and it worked out well for that little period that we needed to work out well.
Soboslai at right back.
Soboslai at right back, yeah, it's another one. The thing with Firmino is that obviously Klopp just loved him in Germany. He probably wanted him at Dortmund and never got the chance. I think it's key having the manager really keen on someone like that. Slot will know loads about Florian Wirtz and what he can offer us. And I think that the main sort of drawback, not the main drawbacks, but the main negatives that have been bubbled up in the media and maybe about our performances as a collective is mainly due to him not being able to play in the position that we play him in best, because we needed him in other positions just to be able to fill some gaps while we've sort of struggled with injuries or system. Like you say, different strokes for different folks in terms of who we're playing and the formation. Robertson offers something very different behind him on his left than Kerkez does. It would be the same with Bradley. Against Real Madrid, when Wirtz is over on the left, Bradley's going nowhere because he's looking after Kylian Mbappe. He doesn't have to think there's space over there, so maybe I can't connect with him or I can't switch it there. Or so yeah, a lot of different sort of facets to it. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun with him, because I think we're probably going to see him mainly where he needs to be now.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance he still becomes the football that we probably perceived we were going to get at the start as well. Phil, I guess when I'm talking about like the work and Liverpool and him both finding a way, really is I look at that City game in particular. Maybe it's hard to look at in isolation because it's just a strange game of football in loads of senses, really, and you maybe get exactly what you're expecting out of City, and a little bit of what you've now come to expect out of Liverpool this season, but you don't necessarily get like lots of traditional Liverpool things, and no less in a game against Manchester City. And I almost looked at that game and was like, well, maybe Wirtz was just like too much of a luxury to have in a game of football like that. But maybe over time, with the hard work that he does, with how much he can prove to be the footballer that we all thought we were getting in theory, he can end up playing in games like Man City, and you wouldn't even have to worry about, you wouldn't have to think about, oh, well, we'll have to put him here or we'll have to move these footballs around. It will just work, basically.
Yeah, I think the luxury thing, I know, I'm going to do the Salah bit now, because it sort of links into that. Sorry,
I think it's my
sorry
next
to
bit anyway, so
take
yeah,
it,
you go,
sorry
you,
to take,
you go for
take
it.
it off you, but you talked about it being luxury in some ways. I actually think it's almost Salah that might be the luxury.
That's fair, yeah.
I think, I didn't think Manchester City played particularly badly. I just thought Liverpool couldn't get going because the structure just didn't work. And I think part of the structure is Salah can't press now properly. and you also know he's not coming back. So that leaves everybody else in a real conundrum with what they do and how they approach things. Whether it's over on the other side, whether it's the fullback behind him, whether it's the midfielder. I think you saw it against PSV when there's a period just after half time when Szoboszlai chases the goalkeeper down and he's sort of like, why aren't we pressing properly? And then they play 2-3 balls out and the left back's away. And it wasn't hard, but it's because it just doesn't knit together. And I think I don't really want to go overboard with yesterday because I think the easiest thing to do when you're in a crisis is go and play West Ham away. Like there's nothing better. You can be a bad team and win 5-0 away at West Ham, and it's happened before. I've seen it happen before. There's nothing really to be gained about this. So this isn't sort of wasn't it great at West Ham? Because that's not how I'm viewing yesterday in any way, shape or form. But I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that he was able to sort of flit around the pitch in the same way and be brighter. And there was, trust isn't the right word, but there was a sort of acceptance that everyone could go everywhere in terms of forwards and backwards, and I just think it made it a lot easier. And the sort of more the last couple of months have gone on, I'm a bit more concerned that part of the problem might be Salah. Now we do get the opportunity for, an extended period now to find out whether that is the case. So it's good that he's growing into this just before that period. So we will get maybe not a definitive answer, but I think we'll, by mid-January, towards the end of January, we'll have a good idea of sort of what this Liverpool team will look like moving forward, but also if that has been part of the problem recently. And it's really hard to discuss about Mohamed Salah being a problem because of the levels he's been at over recent times, but there is.
And even like in the most recent games, when you've watched it sort of on the eye test, like you don't look at Mo Salah and think he's clearly the problem. Like,
no, but like against Forest, he was probably Liverpool's best player. Yeah. So it's not as simple as that. But at the same time, Liverpool lost that game 3-0. Yeah. So, he's not going to hang his hat up. He's not going to go, get on me. I was Liverpool's best player in a 3-0 defeat, is he? So it's not like that's necessarily a defence of him, but it is still the case. He's clearly got a lot to offer still. But I do wonder when the ball's not at his feet, is there a bit of a problem, and it's making life difficult for other people, and maybe it is.
I think without AFCON, the manager would struggle to find out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really difficult thing to do, to take Mo Salah out of a team for 5 or 6 weeks.
Interesting that he's done it now, really.
I think he's done it now
because he's always going to do it in one of these games, though.
He's always going to do it just before he left AFCON, because, as I say, there's 5 or 6 weeks where you don't have him. But without that competition, it'd be really, really difficult for Slot to, no matter how many people are calling for it, or no matter how bad the numbers are or the performances, Liverpool have made a massive investment. They probably come from above. Yeah. That you don't drop him, you get him playing, you get him scoring. We're paying £350 a week for him. Yeah. And if he doesn't play and goes on the bench, there's no resale value. So I honestly believe it caused him a headache. But now we've got the AFCON situation. There's 5 or 6 weeks where Liverpool can play without him, and probably start to plan for life after him. Whether that's, told me today, whether that's personnel or whether that's a system or shape. I wonder whether Slot wants 2 strikers on the pitch and actually wants.
I think
he's at an STK. And then one of the reasons he's not doing it now is because of Salah and because of the options off the bench. I think we'll be in the market for another striker, because the idea of having 2 9s with Wirtz behind them and the wing backs doing the work, that makes a lot of sense to me. But at the minute, you've got Mo Salah, who's, as you say, he doesn't press, and he's not busting the gut. And now I think you'll ask any Liverpool fan in the world, if you're watching a player not score goals and not post numbers, the very least you want is to see him closing players down and coming off covered in sweat and dirt and saying, I'll give everything there. He's not doing that at the minute. I think that's why a lot of people are starting to question whether he should be in the side, because it's fine, the numbers are adding up. I mean, we know Slot and him had a conversation when he came in, and he basically said, look, I'm not going to press, but I'm going to score your goals. Yeah. And he said, that's fine, as long as you score goals, I'm not bothered. I'll make the adjustments elsewhere. But now he's not scoring every week, and he's not pressing, he's not working hard. The rest of the players, as you say, will be a little bit like, well, we can't even press, because if we press now, there's just an outlet there. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. There's always a ball. So these next 5 or 6 weeks will be really interesting. I think we might see the system Slot wants to play. I'm not saying Slot didn't want to sign Mo Salah, because every manager would want Mo Salah on the side. But I think once the other players come in, Wirtz came in, Ekatike came in, and Isak came in, it's given a little bit of a headache in terms of what system we play, because the players I've just brought in don't go alongside Mo Salah. So
I think even like both of those 2 strikers that we signed in the summer naturally feel like they want to pull left. we signed a really, really aggressive right back who's not really a right back, who they've said, oh, he can play on the right wing. Well, that means he can get up that side. I think it all really does fit together without Salah.
That's what I'm saying. I can see that, yeah.
Just, which, you know, it's not the worst problem to have when you've got Mohamed Salah in there, but maybe it just is a problem.
But
I don't know.
at the same time, they'll be rather have this now.
Yeah, 100%.
And have the players to say, right, Salah's gone to AFCON 5 or 6 weeks, we can play a whole new shape with Isak, Eke, TK, Florian Wirtz. It's not a bad problem to have. The problem would be Salah stops scoring, stops assisting, stops working, leaves the club and we go, right, I've got to replace him now. If we can go put a run together over the next 5 or 6 games, I guarantee Liverpool fans will feel a lot better about the remainder of the season, and feel a lot better should anything happen in the summer with Mo Salah interest comes, or you know, a big fee comes in, or he turns around and says, I want to leave, or if he stays and accepts the fact that he's not going to play every week.
Yeah, it comes back to that passivity conversation again for me as well, Kev, where like you look at a front three of, and I guess we kind of found this out a little bit with Isak at the weekend, where he's probably not going to get that many touches, and like, you know, we've referenced Firmino already on the show, and Firmino probably spoiled us really as Liverpool fans, because he was a number 9 who was so involved in the game, if you even want to call him a number 9. Of course, he literally wore the shirt, if we're getting literal about shirt numbers again, but Isak's probably not going to have that many touches, but then in theory that makes him a fairly passive footballer, because he might just have to coast through a game, but he'll pop up with the goods in terms of goals. But then if you've got him through the middle, Gakpo off the left, who I think is a fairly passive footballer but will pop up with goals, and then Mo Salah, who is a fairly passive footballer but will pop up with goals. Well, if there's no one in behind them who's working hard, and maybe that's where the sort of Florian Wirtz secret is, and the potentially away home where he can short-term work with Salah, but it means you have to upset the midfield balance a little bit. Like I sort of always saw this, I guess, power struggle was something I referenced earlier in the season on an Unwrapped show, was the kind of power struggle between Salah and Wirtz, only on the basis that like there's literally one ball on the football pitch that they can touch, and Liverpool have traditionally over the last few years now funneled the ball towards Salah, and in my head in the summer I was like, this is brilliant, because you've got the lads in midfield who can make deep progressions with the ball. That then goes to Wirtz to sort of make that next step towards the attackers. And then it's on, you know, a Mo, for example, to either create something for the lads in the centre on the left, which I think we saw loads of last season, or to create something for himself. And I think actually what you've seen is, well, Wirtz kind of wants to do that, like exactly what I've just said about Salah there, which is move into the attacking space, get between the lines and create something for the lads who are, you know, if he's done it out on the right for the lads on the left-hand side, or if he's done it out on the left for the lads on the right-hand side. And that's kind of where now, particularly off the back of the weekend, and I think I'm right in thinking that Salah will go away as early as like basically after this weekend.
There's a discussion about Brighton, isn't there? They're not sure about Brighton.
Right.
Egypt have had
it's definitely not Inter, though, is it, under any circumstance?
I think he's safe for Inter.
Right.
I think it's after that.
Oh, okay,
it becomes a grey area, because there's something to do with they're not allowed to technically call them up until after Inter, I think, after Brighton, but they've got a friendly and want them
so
earlier.
it's something like that. There's an optional training camp and friendly.
Yeah.
It might not be, I can't remember. But
Salah wants
a bit
to play for Liverpool, doesn't he? I think he's told the...
That's where I wonder if, like, you know, as Keo said, Kev, like it almost is the perfect timing to kind of prepare you for AFCON while Salah is actually still around, because it means that, well, if at any point it's not really working and we just need someone to come on and score a goal for us, then who better than the Egyptian king?
Yeah, I think the manager was probably thinking about this last season, because when Salah's so brilliant last season, he's probably thinking, fucking hell, what am I going to do next year for AFCON? And knowing Arne Slot, he'll have been thinking about exactly what he's going to do. I'm not sure if Isak is the long-term replacement for Salah, and what I mean by that is not positionally, but obviously output, in terms of him just being the guy that's going to pop up with like 25, 30 goals a season and just be that good. I mean, as a striker, I know this isn't a show about Isak, but as a striker, I think he's 26, and typically strikers peak at sort of 27, 28. They actually get older. As they get older, they get better. They just seem to understand the physics of football and where the space is, and that's why Haaland's such a freak of nature. He's so good, and he's still so young. The Salah thing, I'm not sure if there's an issue between them not being able to play together. I think we've not really seen enough of it. Like I say,
I don't think we've seen any of it.
We've not really seen any of it. He's been out on the left. Wirtz has been out on the left when Salah's been on the right. There's a couple of games where he's played in the middle, but Like Phil was saying earlier, we've sort of struggled with the physicality in the Premier League there, and him just getting used to the pace of the game. And I mean, he's played West Ham, and that's probably the easiest one to come into and adjust to the Premier League. I think it just takes a little bit of time. I do think that in football we tend to have a bit of a problem with sort of like instant gratification from something happening. It can't just be all's the best and all's the worst. There's a grey area somewhere in there. I think Florian Wirtz is good enough to learn how to play with Salah, and he's just not had the opportunity to. And I think what the manager's probably thinking is, well, he's gone for AFCON, so what was the point of me trying to get them to play with each other, and when I've got like sort of 2-3 months without the player anyway. I think it's probably going to be a shape change, and I know we're talking about football without positions, but in terms of those two wingers, I'm wondering if maybe that's not going to be a thing, and it is going to be more about the two tens in Szoboszlai and Wirtz, and the width provided by the two fullbacks. And also, I mean, we've not seen anything of Frimpong. We've seen what, five games.
Yeah. I was about to make the point there. I've not checked this, but how many minutes have them new signings actually played together on the pitch? Has there been a moment where Frimpong, Kerkez, Bertie, Isaac and Ekitike played together?
So.
Probably not.
I can't recall them being on the same pitch at the same time.
I mean, madly, Rob was...
time, let's give it a little bit of time. Let them play together.
Exactly.
But Robbo's been on the pitch at the same time as Kerkez, which shows you that we've been struggling in terms of injuries. Like when that happened, I think it was Southampton. I was thinking, what the hell is going on here? And Robbo's centre back.
Palace.
What was it? Palace. Yeah, it's Palace. Yeah. But interestingly, the thing about Ekitike and Isak as the front two, I think that would be really, really interesting. Who was the lad at Leverkusen that Wirtz was just always assisting? It's not Schick, is it?
Boniface, is it?
Boniface was there. There was
Patrick
Schick. There was a third one as well.
But I mean, Patrick Schick, right, as a striker, he's still there, and he's a good player, but he's not like fantastic striker. Wirtz made this guy look like a world beater. He was scoring for fun. I think he got somewhere between sort of 10 and 15 or 15, maybe even more than 15 last season with Florian Wirtz in there. If he is playing with two strikers, again, you've not got the width and two wingers. It's probably just 110 behind them, and then maybe a diamond midfield. You've got your six.
I think that's our best formation. I think that's the way we'll
yeah. And then you've got an 8, and you've got your 10, you've got your 2 in the middle, and it's a lot narrower again with your wingers providing width. We've not seen.
But Wirtz will provide that width.
Fullbacks.
Yeah, Wirtz not going to stay central. Wirtz will go either side.
Fullbacks the width in this.
Did I say wingers?
Yeah. You said wingers.
Sorry, fullbacks are obviously provided the width, and that makes, when you think about that, you go, oh, that's why he signed Kerkez, and that's why he signed Frimpong. It's just getting their boots white with chalk and like running, like providing that width.
There's a genuine argument that both the fullbacks need each other in a weird way, because it'll sort of free the other. One will free the other one up, and the midfield, once the midfield comes together and can work out how they enable those two, and
Gravenberch can drop back into this.
And even in terms of like the connections on the football pitch, like you think about the way that McAllister and Szoboszlai playing in it. Is it the Tony Adams thing where he's like going between the two guys and training, almost like trying to form the literal connection? And like
George Graham used to have him on rope, didn't he?
Yeah. And it's that you can see how like McAllister and Szoboszlai occupying the positions that they occupy.
80s, isn't it? Yeah. How did you sort your offside line out, George? Well, I've basically made the players tie themselves to each other with a rope.
The players tow each other down the pitch.
We had a big tug of war on the footy pitch. I want to finish off just talking a little bit about the price tag, Phil, because it does, I guess, come into any discussions about Wirtz, really. And Kev mentioned the instant gratification element of this there before. Like, I wonder if that's added a bit of a way of expectation to Wirtz in particular. Like, I'm struck by how often he goes away on international duty, and for one, he's asked about things pertaining to the price tag, but also just like settling into the move. But then also how much Nagelsmann has spoke about him this season. It's almost like Nagelsmann is really making a point of being like, I want this footballer to come to Germany and not feel like he has to be a £110 million footballer, like when he plays for Germany, is something different to whatever he has to be at Liverpool, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, he's the main man for Germany, really, isn't he? I think in terms of how they're going to go into the World Cup with not necessarily a team built around him, but a team where he's going to have the most output. The conductor's the exact right word. Yeah, he's going to have the most output and be most involved in everything, and that's where they're going to go from. So you'd probably want £110 million to be doing maybe a bit more of the tangible stuff on a weekly basis in terms of goals, in terms of assists, in terms of whatever you want. I mean, high for creating chances and sort of, yesterday was a really good example of sort of half chances really, wasn't it, in terms of the way he was getting the ball in the right areas, but it just wasn't quite falling right. So sort of, you can sort of look at it and think, well, yeah, I kind of see why it may add pressure and may add to sort of talking points, because when you pay that much money, they should almost to a point be walking in and be your best player from the off. But I think that was probably not a thing, and not a thing we necessarily needed at the time. Maybe we do as the season has unfolded in a probably less than ideal way, I would say. to put it mildly.
Very mild.
Yeah. By the way, that's an absolutely fair way of putting it, Phil.
Sorry, it's only 9 points to the top, that's fine. You wanted someone who would possibly come in and go, right, well, I'll sort it, but didn't need to. And now you're a bit like, okay, well, maybe if he'd have been better from the off, this season wouldn't have been as bad, which is just it's an unfair way of judging it, and you can't just put, I think on the basis of what we've seen so far this season, you can't put the blame for all of this at the hands of one person or two person, whether it's managers, coaches, players, anything. It's just a sort of a perfect marriage of doom in some ways. So to say that one player should have dragged you out of this is just nonsense. But it also means that they're existing in that context and have to deal with it. So just got to fight and get to the other side of this. And then, football never ends. This is the thing. Football doesn't end. It's not terminal. You have a thing and it's like, oh, that's not great. And then eventually you get out of it and then you're fine. And that'll be what happens eventually with him.
I think it's fair to say we didn't need him. And there's a conversation around that.
Josh Williams said that on the last Unwrapped chair, and I was a bit like...
There's conversation around it, but that I don't necessarily means that we shouldn't have signed him. There's an argument that we didn't need him. Liverpool were champions, and we were looking at needing centre-halves and full-backs and strikers, and it surprised us all when we signed him. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have signed him. Just because it was a surprise, just because we weren't screaming out for a number 10, doesn't mean that you don't go and get the best number 10 in Europe available. And in 12 months' time, or 6 months' time, or even 18 months' time, he becomes the player we know he's going to be. Then it'll look like an unbelievable signing. And made the point before again, go and try and get him next summer, after he's just been conducting Germany to maybe a World Cup. The 110 million quid might look cheap.
Yeah, and well, I guess like the problem with him, I guess where Josh Williams was coming from within that is, like, you didn't necessarily need him. The problem is like that only shows up as more of a thing when you don't fill your positions of need. So like we look at centre half, particularly over the last few games, we're like, well, we definitely needed a centre half who was more comfortable on the ball than Ibu was, and like if we don't go out and get that, then is it just a bit frivolous to spend 110 million on Florian Wirtz? And especially, like, Phil mentions the intangibles thing. I'll come to you on this, Kev, actually. The tangibles thing is, if you sign a player who's that expensive, like I remember all the chatter around Declan Rice when he signed for Arsenal, and loads, like it felt like the cliche with Declan Rice at the time was, well, he's not a £100 million footballer. And it's like, on what basis? Is it on the basis that most of what he's going to do is intangible rather than necessarily goals and assists? Now, I mean, you can look at that freak against Real Madrid for if you talk about Declan Rice.
Players of that value almost need to be good at fantasy football.
Exactly, yeah. The ones who
are on a really basic level.
No, it is literally that, and I think it comes back to that like black and white thinking again, where if you play a player out position on a video game, he might look a little bit worse because it's about what the fixed position is. But I was going somewhere with that in regards to Florian Wirtz anyway. But like, almost that again, coming back to the perception that we had. Does signing a £110 million footballer almost make you focus too much on like the wrong things, rather than like, well, actually, a load of the work he does off the ball is going to be absolutely brilliant and make things so much easier for everybody else. But £110 million isn't off the ball work; it's him smashing it in the top corner from a free kick.
Yeah, or assisting everybody all the time.
Exactly.
The thing is, when you sign a player, you've nothing to. Your mind can't go anywhere else other than the price tag, because you can't. There's nothing tangible there. You've not seen him play. You've probably maybe you've caught a few pre-season games, or you've caught what he's done at his previous club. There's still doubt on what's going to happen when he comes to you. So your mind and the media's mind is on the price tag. I honestly, when he said I don't care about the price tag, I genuinely don't think he does. I mean, his personality seems on track, which is massive. I think that there's always risk when you're buying a player that's 116 million or 110 million or whatever he was, especially when he's, like Phil's just sort of alluded to, German. He's not English, not from the Premier League, 22 years old. I mean, you could be signing someone who's just like an egotistical maniac. And I mean, I look at Lamine Yamal, and I'm like, wow, that's so impressive at his age. But his dad's a fucking wanker. Do you know what I mean? Like his dad's a maniac. And that would worry me if Florian Wirtz had the wrong people around him. I think when an opportunity arrives, and this is back to sort of Josh's not need thing, because I think I agree with what Josh was saying. He was saying we didn't need him, but I'm so glad that we've got him.
Yeah.
When the sort of default move is this mercurial German talent is moving to Bayern Munich, there are no two ways about it. And then in a week, Bayern space is like, no, he's not. He's going to Liverpool. Like that blew my head open because they get what they want when there's a German player or a fantastic young player. I mean, their academy at the moment's nuts. They're 17-year-olds scoring. I love Pavlovic that they've got there. But I mean, Florian Wirtz was just done and dusted. I think that his parents had done a sort of gentleman's agreement and said he's coming, it's fine. And then I think the players went, actually, maybe I can challenge myself. Maybe I can go to England and challenge myself. And where do I want to be? I want to be under Arne Slot at Liverpool. I think that's where the sort of like necessity, get that out the window. When that opportunity is there, you just have to go for it. Whether Arne Slot's going to change his system to get a 10 in, who knows? We've just spoke about this whole show. We don't know what the actual shape looks like or what the team looks like because we've not had everybody fit. But I mean, I'll go out on a limb and just say he's going to be the best player in the Premier League.
And on the price tag as well, I think it's important to say, I couldn't care less.
It's not our money, is it?
It doesn't come out of my pocket, and it won't go in my pocket when we sell them. I don't go the match to justify price tags. I go to match to watch great footballers and have a laugh at me mates. Or spend 150 if you want, spend 200 if you want. I don't care.
I think the pressure's on Liverpool because if things were to go sideways, and I hope to God they don't, if things were to go sideways and he did want to leave, we can't afford to lose him on a free because that's 116 million down the drain unless he has been scoring for fun and assisting for fun in the 4 or 5 years that he was here. There needs to be a plan in place to make him the star of the show, the Mo Salah of the show in terms of his pay packet and his wages and his loyalty and how he's looked after and how the team's ticking and how he's making the team tick. I think that's really important. But again, the club are clever and they'll have looked into that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the best of times. It was the Wirtz of times, as some people across social media who aren't funny, Andy Heaton, have been saying. Let's hope the best of times are still to come for Florian Wirtz. Nice one to all the lads in the studio here. Nice one to use for listening and watching. Nice one to Aura Frames for sponsoring the show as well. Long live Bayern Space.